The millionaire never imagined the poor girl would buy that. He cried non-stop. If this story caught your interest, subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Let's begin. On an ordinary morning on Fifth Avenue, amidst the city's hurried comings and goings, Ethan Hayes, a 42-year-old billionaire entrepreneur, was leaving his luxurious penthouse for another routine day. As the owner of Horizon Tech, one of the largest technology holdings in North America, he had everything money could buy: luxury cars, exclusive works of art, constant trips on private jets, and a schedule packed with decisive meetings. But inside, Ethan lived with an emptiness that not even his accumulated millions could fill. He was known for his coldness and his analytical approach to life. For him, charity had always been a matter of marketing or tax deductions, never of feeling. The New York sky was grey that June morning, with the kind of fine drizzle that locals affectionately call a classic city drizzle. Ethan adjusted his custom-made Italian suit jacket as the building's doorman opened the door for him with the usual reverence. Like every other day, his driver, James, was already waiting with the car door open. "Good morning, Mr. Hayes. We have a meeting with the development team at 9, and then with the Nexus project investors at 11. Cancel the 11 o'clock meeting. I want to personally review the numbers before presenting them," Ethan replied, without taking his eyes off his phone. "As you wish, sir," said James, already used to the sudden changes in his boss's schedule. The car glided smoothly down Fifth Avenue, navigating the dense traffic with the skill of someone who knew every possible detour. Ethan watched the city through the window, but he didn't truly see it. His thoughts were elsewhere, on the stocks he needed to sell, the startups he planned to acquire, the maneuvers necessary to expand his empire even further. When the car stopped at a red light near the Met, Ethan impulsively decided he needed coffee. "Stop at the City Bakery. James, I'm going to grab a quick coffee. But sir, the meeting is in 20 minutes. "I know how much time I have," Ethan cut in, with that tone that brooked no argument. James sighed discreetly and obeyed, parking in front of the famous bakery. Ethan got out of the car without waiting for the driver to open the door for him, an unusual gesture that showed his impatience. It was in that moment, as he bypassed a small line forming at the bakery entrance, that he saw her. Near the bakery, leaning against the wall of an old bank, was a little girl. She wore a faded purple jacket, clearly too large for her thin frame. Her dark brown hair was messily tied back, and her face, still childlike, showed signs of premature exhaustion. She wasn't begging or approaching pedestrians. She just held a cardboard sign with crudely drawn letters that read, "Please, I'm hungry." Ethan had passed many people in similar situations over the years. He had always found it easier to look away and keep walking, but there was something different about this child. She didn't look at him with desperation, nor did she hold out her hand. She just stood there, as if she were in no hurry and expected nothing from anyone. This lack of expectation made him stop, for the first time in a long time. Something about the scene, perhaps the contrast between his $5,000 suit and the girl's tattered jacket, or perhaps something deeper that even he couldn't name, bothered him in a way he wasn't used to. He watched the girl for a few moments before approaching, seized by a curiosity he couldn't explain. As he bent down to get a better look at her face, he noticed an unusual lucidity in her eyes. It was as if, despite her young age, she already understood the world with a depth few adults ever achieved. "What's your name?" Ethan asked, surprising himself with the softness in his voice. The girl stared at him for a few seconds, as if assessing whether he deserved an answer. "Maya," she finally replied, her voice clear and unafraid. "Maya," Ethan repeated. "How old are you?" 10, she answered, still observing him with those eyes that seemed much older than her body. "Where are your parents?" Maya briefly looked away. "My mom is sick. My dad," she paused. "He left a long time ago." Ethan felt a strange tightness in his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. Empathy, perhaps, or guilt. He who commanded meetings with dozens of executives without batting an eye, who closed multi-million-dollar deals with the coolness of a poker player, felt disarmed before this child. And then, without much thought, he did something he had never done before. He took the black card out of his wallet, the same one he used for multi-million-dollar purchases, and held it out to the girl. "Take it," he said. The PIN is 1989. You can use it to buy whatever you want. No limits, anything. Maya's eyes widened, not with greed or excitement, but with pure confusion. Why? She asked, not taking the card. The question caught Ethan off guard. Why indeed? Even he couldn't explain the impulse. Just take it, he insisted, placing the card in her small hand and closing her fingers around it. I want to see what you'll do with it. Maya looked at the shiny black card in her hand as if she were holding something dangerous. I have no way to give it back to you, she said, showing an adult concern that seemed absurdly out of place on her childish face. I'll be at the bakery across the street, Ethan said, pointing to the city bakery. I'll wait. You have all day. Without waiting for a reply, Ethan stood up and crossed the street toward the bakery. Outside, James watched him with a puzzled expression, but didn't dare to question him. Ethan indicated that he would wait there and entered the establishment. From a table near the window, he ordered an espresso and watched Maya. The girl remained motionless for several minutes, still looking at the card in her hands. Finally, she put it in her jacket pocket, carefully folded her cardboard sign and began to walk. Ethan quickly paid his bill and left the bakery. He waved to James, indicating that he should not follow. Cancel all my appointments for today, he ordered. And stay nearby, I might need you later. He followed Maya from a distance, keeping himself discreet. It was a test. He wanted to see if the girl, faced with the chance to have everything, would give in to material pleasures. For him, it was almost an anthropological experiment. He was sure that Maya would run to the nearest toy store, get lost among sweets, dolls, and costumes, as any child would, and deep down he hoped for it. He needed to confirm his belief that people, given the choice, always choose for themselves. Maya walked slowly, almost hesitantly through the streets. She occasionally stopped in front of some shop windows, observed, but soon moved on. To Ethan's surprise, she didn't enter any toy or candy stores. Instead, she headed to the shops at Columbus Circle. Ethan followed her, maintaining a safe distance. Inside the mall, he had the advantage of blending into the crowd. He watched as Maya stopped in front of a pharmacy, where she stared at a small display of bandages and ointments. Then, she headed to the supermarket in the mall. To avoid drawing attention by following her inside the market, Ethan used his contacts. A quick call to the mall's security manager, who, by coincidence, used the security systems developed by one of Ethan's companies, and he soon had access to the security camera footage on his phone. What he saw intrigued him. Maya walked cautiously between the aisles, comparing prices, reading labels with difficulty, and choosing basic products: bread, milk, cans of soup, packages of rice and pasta. At one point, she approached an employee and asked for help calculating how much she could buy for a lot of people who are hungry. Ethan turned up the volume to hear the conversation. I want to buy food that feeds a lot of people. That's nutritious, Maya was saying to the surprised attendant. I want to help the people who sleep in the square. Are you alone, dear? Where are your parents? The employee asked, clearly suspicious. Maya hesitated for a moment before answering. My mom is waiting for me outside. She gave me this card to buy food for her social project. The improvised lie seemed to calm the employee, who began to help her select low-cost, high-nutrition foods. Ethan watched it all with growing fascination. Instead of choosing the most expensive or sweet foods, Maya opted for what would nourish more for less, a logic that many adults with financial literacy failed to apply. After the supermarket, Maya went to the clothing section of a department store. Ethan expected to see her choosing colorful dresses, shiny shoes, or toys, but again she surprised him. She chose thermal socks and gloves in various sizes. She asked a saleswoman if there were adult sizes, because the people who sleep on the street get cold feet and hands. At the pharmacy she had observed earlier, she asked for bandages, alcohol, band-aids, and small bottles of shampoo. Everything she picked had a clear destination, never for herself. Never a treat, a whim, a distraction. Ethan was stunned. In his experience, all people, including himself, succumbed to temptation when they had unlimited resources. But this girl was using the no-limit card not for herself, but for people she didn't even know. Upon leaving the mall with several bags, Maya headed for Union Square. Ethan followed her, getting more and more involved in this improvised social experiment. It was then that he saw something even more unexpected. The girl approached homeless people with a soft voice and a respectful posture, handing out the items one by one. She started with an elderly man, wrapped in thin blankets, then a couple sheltered under an awning, and continued until she found a whole group near Carnegie Hall. There, she organized everything with a disconcerting naturalness, distributing food, clothes, and even words of comfort. She remembered names. She asked how they felt. She smiled with the care of someone who knew the pain of being ignored. "Mr. Francis, I brought that medicine for your back pain you mentioned," she said to a white-haired man. "And there are new socks too, so your feet don't get wet with this rain." "God bless you, little one," the man replied, his eyes welling up. "You're an angel." "Mrs. Clare, the clinic doctor said you need to take these medicines every day," she explained to a woman huddled on a bench. "I marked them with numbers so you don't get confused." And so she went from person to person, distributing not just material items, but dignity. She treated each one by name, remembered details of previous conversations, and showed a respect that many hadn't received in years. Ethan, hidden behind a newsstand, felt something strange happening inside him. It was as if an invisible wall was cracking, letting in a light he hadn't seen in a long time, or perhaps had never seen. This girl who had nothing gave everything, and he who had everything had never given anything, at least not without calculating the return. As the sky darkened over New York, Maya finished her distribution and walked back to the place where Ethan had found her that morning. He followed her, keeping his distance, still processing what he had witnessed. Upon arriving at the original spot near the bakery, Maya carefully folded the empty bags and put them in her jacket pocket. She sat in the same place, hugging her body with the thin jacket. The card was still in her hands. When Ethan approached, she recognized him with a serene smile. She held out the card as if returning something sacred. He knelt on the sidewalk, not caring about his expensive suit. For the first time in a long time, he couldn't find the words. "You didn't buy anything for yourself," he finally said, his voice almost a whisper. Maya tilted her head slightly, as if the observation were curious. "I didn't need anything," she replied simply. "They did." "How do you know all those people?" "I live in a shelter near here. Sometimes I come to Fifth Avenue. I know a lot of people who live on the streets, but you could have bought anything. Toys, clothes, candy." Maya smiled again, that smile of someone who knows something you haven't yet understood. "I have a secret," she said, leaning closer. "When you help someone, it's like you get a gift too. Inside here," she pointed to her own chest. Ethan felt his vision blur. He blinked quickly, trying to hide what he recognized with astonishment as tears. How long had it been since he cried? 5 years? 10? Since the divorce, maybe. Or even before. "Why did you give me your card?" Maya asked with genuine curiosity. The question caught Ethan off guard. Why really? Had it been an impulse, an experiment, a morbid curiosity? Or was there something more? Some part of him that still believed in goodness, in altruism, in humanity? "I wanted to see what you would do," he answered honestly. "I thought you would buy things for yourself." "And were you disappointed?" she asked, her eyes fixed on his. "No," Ethan said, surprising himself with the sincerity of the answer. "I was impressed." Maya smiled, and in that smile was a wisdom that didn't match her age. "Thank you for letting me help," she said, returning the card. "It was the best day of my life." Ethan took the card, feeling its weight in a way he had never felt before. That small plastic rectangle, which had always represented power and status, now seemed empty, insignificant compared to what he had just witnessed. "Where do you live, Maya?" "At the shelter you mentioned." "At the Hope Institute in the Lower East Side. It's a good place. The ladies take good care of us, but there are a lot of kids." She hesitated. "My mom is in the hospital. She got really sick. When she gets better, we'll live together again." There was hope in her voice, but also a shadow that Ethan couldn't help but notice. Something told him that her mother's situation was more complicated than the girl admitted. "I'll take you back to the shelter," Ethan offered. "It's getting dark." Maya hesitated. "I can't accept rides from strangers." Ethan almost laughed at the irony. She had accepted a limitless credit card from a stranger but refused a ride. There was a peculiar logic to it, an innocence mixed with caution that intrigued him more and more. "My driver can take us," he explained, pointing to James, who was waiting patiently in the car. "It's safer than you walking alone at this hour." After a moment of deliberation, Maya accepted with a nod. On the way to the shelter, Ethan watched her out of the corner of his eye. She looked out the window with a dreamy expression, as if she saw beauty in a city that for him had always seemed merely functional, a chessboard where he moved his pieces. When they arrived at the Hope Institute, a simple but well-maintained building on a quiet street, a middle-aged woman came out hurriedly to greet them. "Maya, we were worried. You left after lunch and didn't come back for dinner." "Sorry, Miss Gillian," Maya replied, lowering her head. "I was helping some people." The woman then noticed Ethan and the luxurious car, and her expression changed to one of concern and suspicion. "Who are you, sir?" she asked firmly, pulling Maya close in a protective gesture. Ethan realized how the scene must look, a man in an expensive suit bringing a girl from the shelter in a luxury car. He quickly identified himself, explaining the chance encounter and omitting the part about the credit card. "Maya is a very special child," he said, trying to reassure the caregiver. "All our children are special." "Sir?" Ms. Gillian replied, still suspicious. "Of course," Ethan agreed. "I'd like to learn more about the Institute's work, if possible. Maybe my company could help in some way." The mention of financial help softened Ms. Gillian's expression a bit. "You can come back tomorrow during business hours and speak with our director, Ms. Cecilia." Ethan nodded and turned to say goodbye to Maya. "Thank you for today," he said, not knowing exactly how to express the whirlwind of emotions he felt. "I learned a lot from you." Maya smiled, that same serene smile that seemed to light up everything around her. "Are you coming back?" she asked with a barely disguised hope in her voice. "I will," Ethan promised, surprising himself with his own certainty. "Tomorrow." As the car pulled away from the shelter, Ethan found himself doing something he hadn't done in years, making plans that didn't involve profits, acquisitions, or market strategies. Plans that involved people. One person in particular, a girl who in a single day had managed to crack open the wall he had built around his own heart. What began as a simple test had become the turning point of a lifetime. But Ethan didn't yet know that the night was far from over, and that this girl, with her silent gesture, was about to change not only the course of her own story, but his as well. Forever. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. Lying in his king-size bed, with Egyptian cotton sheets that cost more than an average person's weekly salary, he felt strangely uncomfortable. His penthouse apartment, with a panoramic view of Central Park, now seemed too big, too empty. The million-dollar works of art on the walls, an authentic Warhol, a Calder sculpture, once a source of pride, now seemed to watch him with accusing eyes. Why had this girl affected him so much? In his 20-year career, Ethan had built an empire based on rational, calculated decisions. Emotion was a luxury successful executives couldn't afford. That was his philosophy, the mantra he repeated in lectures to young entrepreneurs. "Feelings don't close deals," he used to say. And yet there he was, sleepless, thinking about a child he had met by chance on the street. At dawn, Ethan was already on his feet. He skipped the elaborate breakfast his housekeeper, Mrs. Zoe, had prepared, grabbing only a black coffee. He dressed less formally than usual, jeans and a button-down shirt, something he rarely wore outside of weekends at his beach house in the Hamptons. "Aren't you going to the office today, sir?" Mrs. Zoe asked, surprised by his casual attire in the early hour. It was only 7 a.m. "No, I have other plans," Ethan replied vaguely. "Don't wait for me for lunch." In the elevator, Ethan sent a message to his assistant, Rebecca, asking her to reschedule all his meetings again. She replied almost immediately, with a mix of professional concern and irritation. "Ethan, you never cancel meetings 2 days in a row. Is everything okay? The Nexus Project investors are not going to like this at all." "Tell them I'm doing field research for a new company social project," he replied, surprising himself with the ease of the lie. Or was it the truth? Even he didn't know yet. He dismissed James and his executive car, opting for a regular ride-sharing app. He wanted to go unnoticed. His first stop was a coffee shop near the Hope Institute, where he bought coffee and bagels to go. He wanted to make a good impression on the director, Miss Cecilia. The Hope Institute looked different in the daylight. It was an old building, probably an early 20th century mansion adapted for its new function. The walls, painted a pale yellow, were peeling in some spots. The garden, though simple, was well kept, with a few colorful flowers and a small vegetable patch on the side. At the entrance, A carved wooden sign announced, "Home is where there is love." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. His own house with all its luxuries had never felt like a home. It was a real estate investment, a status symbol, never a place of belonging. When he rang the bell, he was greeted by a young woman in her early 20s who introduced herself as a social work intern. She led him to a small room where a grey-haired lady was organizing some papers. "Miss Cecilia, this is the gentleman who brought Maya back yesterday," the intern announced. The director looked up from her documents and observed Ethan with a penetrating gaze, as if she could read his intentions. "Ethan Hayes," he introduced himself, extending his hand and offering the bag of coffee and bagels. "I hope I'm not bothering you so early." "I imagine the owner of Horizon Tech has very valuable time," Cecilia replied, accepting the bag with a small smile. "Ms. Gillian told me about your encounter with Maya yesterday. I must confess I was curious." Ethan hadn't expected to be recognized, but it shouldn't have been a surprise. His face occasionally appeared in business magazines and specialized websites. "Maya is an extraordinary child," he commented, sitting in the chair Cecilia offered. "They all are. Mr. Hayes, they all are." The director opened the bag and offered Ethan a bagel, which he accepted out of politeness. "What brings you here so early?" "I doubt it's just to bring breakfast." Cecilia's frankness was refreshing for someone accustomed to the falsehoods of the corporate world. Ethan decided to be equally direct. "I want to help the Institute," he said, "and I want to better understand Maya's story." Cecilia took a sip of coffee before answering. "Help is always welcome. Mr. Hayes, we have 52 children here, all with stories that would break hearts far harder than yours." She paused. "As for Maya, well, she's been with us for almost a year. Her mother, Ms. Louisa, worked as a housekeeper until she fell gravely ill. With no close family and no resources to care for her daughter during the treatment, she turned to us. Maya is a special child with an uncommon empathy. Since she arrived, she has worried more about others than herself. Her mother, what is her illness?" Cecilia hesitated. "Advanced stage leukemia. The prognosis is not good, unfortunately. Maya visits her at the hospital once a week. It's a difficult time for her." Ethan felt his heart clench. "And the father?" "He abandoned the family when Maya was 5. Never heard from him again." The story was sadly common, a single mother struggling to raise her daughter, a serious illness changing everything. What wasn't common was Maya's reaction to adversity. Instead of turning inward, of becoming bitter, she channeled her pain into compassion for others. "How can I help?" Ethan asked with a sincerity that surprised himself. "It depends," Cecilia replied, studying him. "Do you want to help the Institute, or do you want to help Maya?" The question caught him off guard. He had arrived thinking of making a generous donation, putting his name on a plaque and moving on with his life, feeling good about himself. But now, faced with Cecilia's direct question, he realized he wanted more. "Both," he answered honestly. "I want to help the Institute because the work you do is important, and I want to help Maya because—" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "Because yesterday she showed me something I had forgotten, that maybe I never really knew." "And what would that be?" Cecilia asked with genuine curiosity. "Humanity," Ethan replied simply. "Generosity without expecting anything in return." A small smile appeared on Cecilia's lips. "Well, Mr. Hayes, I think we can work together then. The Institute always needs financial support, of course. But the children need more than money. They need presence, time, genuine attention. I'm willing to offer all three," Ethan assured her. "Can I see Maya today?" "She's at school right now. Our children attend the public school nearby. They come back around 12:30 for lunch." Ethan checked his watch. It was only 8:30. "I can wait. In fact, I'd like to get to know the Institute better. If it's not an inconvenience." Cecilia smiled, a smile that seemed to say she knew exactly what was happening to Ethan, even before he knew it himself. "It will be a pleasure to show you our home. Mr. Hayes." The following hours were a revelation for Ethan. Cecilia guided him through the various areas of the Institute, the simple but clean and organized dormitories separated by age group, the study room with old donated computers, the small library with books of all kinds, the kitchen where 3 ladies were preparing lunch, the courtyard where some young children, who didn't yet go to school, played under the supervision of volunteers. In each space, Ethan observed the details that betrayed the scarcity of resources. Cracks disguised with colorful pictures made by the children themselves. Worn but well-maintained furniture. Mended toys that continued to fulfill their function of bringing joy. At the same time, he noticed the abundance of other, less tangible resources, the affection of the staff and volunteers, the care for each child's individuality, the effort to create a family atmosphere. Even in adverse circumstances, he saw the room where Maya slept, shared with 5 other girls of similar age. Her bed was easily identifiable. It was meticulously made, with a small worn teddy bear in the center of the pillow. On the nightstand, a photo in a simple frame showed Maya next to a woman with a gentle but visibly weary face. Her mother, Ethan presumed. "Maya is very organized," Cecilia commented. "She always leaves everything in order before she leaves. Sounds that bear is her greatest treasure, a gift from her mother before she was hospitalized." At noon, the children began to return from school in small groups, always accompanied by a responsible adult. Ethan watched them from Cecilia's office, noticing how each child, despite their difficult circumstances, seemed to find reasons to smile, to play, to simply be a child. And then finally, he spotted Maya. She was walking calmly beside a smaller girl holding her backpack to help her. Her school uniform, though simple, was impeccably clean and ironed. Her hair, unlike the day before, was carefully braided. When Maya entered the dining hall and saw Ethan sitting next to Cecilia, her eyes lit up with a genuine smile. She approached, still holding the smaller girl's hand. "You really came back," she said, with a mixture of surprise and joy that made Ethan feel something warm in his chest. "I promised, didn't I?" he replied, returning the smile. "And you know that promises are important." Maya nodded seriously. "This is my friend B," she introduced the smaller girl, who looked to be about 6. "She's new here and is still scared. I'm showing her everything." Ethan bent down to be at the girl's eye level and extended his hand to B. "A pleasure to meet you, B. I'm new here too. Maybe we can learn about this place together." The little girl looked at Maya as if seeking confirmation, and only after receiving an encouraging nod did she extend her small hand to Ethan. The delicate and trusting touch of that child caused another wave of emotion in him. "The girls need to have lunch now." Cecilia intervened gently. "Perhaps Mr. Hayes would like to join us for the meal." "It would be a pleasure," Ethan replied promptly, not caring that his usual lunch at Michelin-starred restaurants was being replaced by a simple meal in a shelter's dining hall. During lunch, sitting between Maya and B, Ethan observed the dynamics of the children. Unlike the business dinners he was used to, where every word was calculated and every gesture had an intention, here everything was spontaneous, genuine. The children chatted excitedly about school games and future dreams. Some looked at him with curiosity, perhaps intrigued by the presence of a different adult, but soon returned to their childish conversations. Maya, however, seemed to notice Ethan's initial discomfort and made a point of including him in the conversations, explaining who each child was, telling little stories about daily life at the institute. "That's Peter, he's very good at math. And that's Julia, she draws better than anyone. Raphael over there won the school's poetry contest, did you know?" Ethan listened with genuine interest, noticing how Maya talked about the talents of others, never her own. When he asked what she liked to do, Maya seemed momentarily confused, as if the question were unexpected. "I like to help," she finally replied. "I like to read too, and to take care of the garden. Plants are cool. They always grow if you take good care of them." After lunch, as the children dispersed for their afternoon activities, Ethan asked to speak privately with Cecilia again. He had a concrete proposal in mind. "I want to make a monthly donation to the Institute," he began. "Something substantial that can really make a difference in these children's lives." Cecilia nodded, already expecting something along those lines. "It would be very welcome. We have many urgent needs. Furthermore," Ethan continued, "I want to establish a fund for Maya's mother's treatment. The best doctors, the best hospital, whatever is necessary." The director looked at him with an expression that mixed gratitude and concern. "That's very generous, Mr. Hayes, but I have to ask, why this specific interest in Maya? I understand she impressed you, but we have many children here with equally touching stories." The question was fair. Why had Maya affected him so much? Ethan thought for a moment before answering, searching within himself for the truth. Yesterday I gave her my credit card with no limit, he confessed finally. It was an impulse, a test. I wanted to see what a child would do with unlimited resources. Cecilia's eyes widened, clearly shocked. You did what? I know. It was irresponsible, Ethan admitted. But what happened next changed something in me. Maya used the card to buy food, medicine, and clothes, not for herself but for people on the street. She knew these people by name, knew what they needed, treated them with dignity. I have never seen anything like it. He paused, searching for the words. That girl taught me more about humanity in one day than I've learned in 42 years of life. Cecilia watched him with a softer expression now. I see. Maya has that effect on people. She carries a light that many adults lost a long time ago. Exactly, Ethan agreed. And I want to help her, not just with money, but with my presence. I want to be a mentor to her, if you'll allow it. The proposal hung in the air for a few moments. Cecilia seemed to be evaluating not just Ethan's words, but his deepest intentions. You know, Mr. Hayes, we have many benefactors who show up, make donations, take pictures for their social media, and never come back. Our resources are scarce, but the scarcest resource is consistency. The children need people who will stick around, who keep their promises. I understand, Ethan said, with a conviction that surprised himself. And I'm willing to prove that I'm different, that this isn't just a passing phase of charity to ease my conscience. Cecilia smiled. Well, then we have an agreement. You can get involved with our children, especially Maya, as long as you're consistent. We have a mentorship program that might be suitable. The mentors visit regularly, help with homework, take the children on cultural outings, and serve as a positive adult role model in their lives. Yeah, that's exactly what I want to do, Ethan confirmed. Great, but we have a process, forms, background checks, necessary bureaucracy to protect the children. Of course, I'll do whatever is necessary. And as for the donation and the fund for Maya's mother's treatment, I need to discuss that with our legal team. We have to do everything by the book. No problem. My lawyers can contact you to facilitate the process. As they discussed the practical details, Ethan felt a light knock on the door. It was Maya. Ms. Cecilia, can I show Mr. Ethan our garden? We're harvesting tomatoes today. Cecilia looked at Ethan, as if asking if he was really willing to get his hands dirty in a community garden. Her look said, "This is a test." "I'd love to see the garden," Ethan replied sincerely. "And you can just call me Ethan." "Okay, Ethan," Maya replied with a smile. "Come with me." As he followed her through the garden toward the vegetable patch, Ethan noticed how the other children respected her. Even some of the older ones seemed to recognize something special in her. In the small garden, proudly maintained by the children with the help of an elderly volunteer, whom Maya introduced as Grandma Jo, there were tomatoes, lettuce, carrots, and aromatic herbs. "Everything here is organic," Maya explained with pride. "Grandma Jo taught us not to use pesticides. It takes longer to grow, but it's healthier." "This girl knows more about sustainable agriculture than many agronomists out there," the old woman commented, adjusting the straw hat that protected her from the sun. "She has a green thumb." Maya blushed at the compliment, but soon returned to talking excitedly about the project. "We use the vegetables in the Institute's kitchen and also sell some at the neighborhood farmers market on Saturdays. The money goes into a special fund for all the children's outings." You go to the market to sell?" Ethan asked, imagining the scene. "I do, me and 3 other kids, always with an adult. It's really cool. We make signs explaining that they're organic products from our shelter, and people like to buy them to help." The idea of Maya, a child who had practically nothing, selling organic vegetables at a market to help other children, created another crack in Ethan's emotional armor. In his world, profit was the ultimate goal of any enterprise. For Maya, it was just a means to bring joy to others. "Would you like to come to our stand next Saturday?" Maya invited, as she gently picked a ripe tomato. "You could see how we do it." "I'd love to," Ethan replied without hesitation. The idea of waking up early on a Saturday to go to a community market, something he would normally consider a waste of time, now seemed strangely appealing. While helping Maya pick tomatoes, getting his hands dirty for the first time in decades, Ethan found himself thinking about how drastically his life had changed in just 24 hours. The previous morning, his biggest challenge was the acquisition of an artificial intelligence startup that would add millions to his company's value. Now he was learning from a 10-year-old girl about organic farming and market sales. The most surprising thing was that he didn't miss his meetings, his lunches at sophisticated restaurants, his high-stakes negotiations. The simplicity of that moment, the warm afternoon sun, the smell of damp earth, Maya's genuine excitement as she explained how she knew a tomato was perfectly ripe, seemed to fill a void that all the money and power had failed to fill. When his cell phone rang, interrupting the moment, Ethan ignored it, something he would have never done before. Only later, when he quickly checked, did he see it was Rebecca, his assistant, probably worried about his disappearance. "Do you need to get that?" Maya asked, noticing his hesitation. "No, it's nothing urgent," Ethan replied, putting his phone on silent and returning his attention to the garden. "Teach me more about these aromatic herbs. What do you use them for?" Maya's face lit up again as she explained in detail the different culinary and medicinal uses of each plant. Ethan listened attentively, realizing that perhaps for the first time in his adult life, he was fully present in the moment, without part of his mind wandering to work problems, market strategies, or future planning. He was there, completely. There with this extraordinary child who seemed to have so much to teach. At the end of the day, when he said goodbye to Maya, promising to return the next day to help her with her homework, Ethan felt strangely light. As he got into the ride-share car that would take him back to his empty penthouse, he knew that something fundamental had changed within him. What began as an improvised social experiment was turning into a journey of self-discovery. His phone rang again. Rebecca once more. "Rebecca, sorry I didn't answer earlier," he said upon finally answering. "Ethan, is everything okay? We're all worried. You never just disappear like this." "I'm fine. In fact, I'm better than I've been in a long time." He paused. "Rebecca, I need you to research everything about leukemia, the best treatments, the best doctors, the latest research. And I also want information on how to create a foundation." "A foundation? Ethan, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about doing something meaningful with all this money we've accumulated, something beyond just making more money." The silence on the other end of the line revealed his assistant's surprise. "And Rebecca," Ethan continued, "reschedule all my meetings for the next few days. I'm working on a new project, the most important one of my career." As he hung up, Ethan looked out the car window at the city that was beginning to light up. New York, which had always seemed to him just a backdrop for his business, now seemed alive, vibrant, full of human stories he had ignored for decades. And at the center of this new perception was Maya, a child who, with a simple act of generosity, had begun to rebuild his lost humanity. That night, for the first time in years, Ethan slept soundly without the help of medication, and he dreamed, not of charts, spreadsheets, or contracts, but of a colorful garden where children laughed as they picked bright red tomatoes under the sun of a perfect afternoon. In the following weeks, Ethan dove headfirst into his new routine. Every morning, after a brief stop at the office to handle only the essentials, he headed to the Hope Institute. His afternoons were dedicated to Maya and the other children, helping with homework, playing games in the courtyard, reading stories to the younger ones. For someone who used to measure his time in dollars, these unproductive hours proved to be surprisingly valuable. The process of becoming an official mentor was underway, with all the necessary bureaucracy. Meanwhile, Ethan took the opportunity to get to know Maya's world more deeply. Every new detail he discovered about her increased his admiration. Maya wasn't just kind, she was resilient, intelligent, and possessed a wisdom that defied her age. At school, despite her emotional difficulties, she maintained exemplary grades. Her notebooks, which Ethan helped her review, were organized with neat handwriting. Her drawings, which decorated a bulletin board at the Institute, showed a remarkable artistic sensibility. Colorful landscapes, always with smiling people together, as if she were projecting onto paper the world she wished to see. On a particularly sunny Saturday, as promised, Ethan attended the neighborhood farmer's market to watch the sale of the garden's produce. He arrived early, dressed simply, jeans, a basic t-shirt and sneakers, a look he now frequently adopted to the astonishment of his employees. He found Maya already organizing the vegetables at the small makeshift stand, along with 3 other children from the institute, and Grandma Jo, who supervised everything with a watchful eye. "Ethan, you really came," Maya exclaimed when she saw him, with that smile that had already become a ray of light in his life. "Of course I came," he replied, looking impressed at the organization of the stand. "I never break my promises, remember?" The children had created colorful posters explaining the origin of the products and how the money would be used. The vegetables were carefully arranged, clean, and organized by type. There was a small toy cash register for the money, operated by a boy of about 12 whom Maya introduced as Lucas, our treasurer. "And how much is everything?" Ethan asked, observing the perfectly ripe tomatoes he himself had helped pick days before. "We check the prices at the market beforehand, so we don't charge too much or too little," Maya explained. "It has to be fair, right?" "Fair," Ethan repeated, thinking about how this simple concept seemed so absent in the business world he inhabited. How many times had he celebrated deals that, while legal, were far from fair? The morning at the market was another revelation. Ethan watched how Maya interacted with the customers, patiently explaining about organic farming, genuinely thanking them for each purchase, telling them how the children at the institute cared for the garden. There was not the slightest trace of the sales techniques he knew so well, and yet, or perhaps because of it, people bought, often leaving change or paying more than the asking price as a way to contribute. "You're a great salesperson," Ethan commented during a quieter moment. Maya seemed confused. "I'm not selling, I'm sharing," she replied simply. "People like to help when they understand why it's important." That sentence, spoken without any pretense, hit Ethan like an epiphany. Throughout his career, he had thought in terms of convincing, persuading, sometimes even manipulating. The idea of sharing a purpose, of genuinely connecting with people through common values, had never been part of his business strategy. At the end of the morning, when all the vegetables had been sold, Lucas proudly counted the money. A little over $200, an amount Ethan used to spend on a single tie, but which for the children represented an extraordinary achievement. "This will be enough to take everyone to the planetarium on the next holiday," Maya celebrated, as she helped pack up the collapsible stand. "We have $30 left over that we'll save for the next trip." "What if we increased that amount?" Ethan suggested. "I could add a sum and you could go on an even bigger trip, maybe to the zoo or the aquarium." Maya frowned, seeming to genuinely consider the offer. After a few seconds, she shook her head. "Thank you, Ethan, but I don't think so. We're happier when we achieve things with our own work. Isn't it better that way?" Again, Ethan felt the impact of Maya's simple but profound words. She was refusing easy money in favor of the satisfaction of her own effort, a lesson many adults never learned. "You're right," he agreed. "It is better this way. But can I at least come with you on the trip?" Maya's smile was answer enough. Back at the Hope Institute, after the community lunch that was now part of Ethan's Saturday routine, he was called for a private conversation with Cecilia. The director seemed serious, which immediately caused him apprehension. "Is there a problem with my mentorship application?" he asked as soon as they sat down in the small room that served as her office. "No, not at all," Cecilia reassured him. "In fact, the committee has already approved your participation. You've passed all the necessary checks. You are officially a mentor of the Hope Institute." Ethan felt a relief and a satisfaction he hadn't experienced since his first major business deals. "That's great," he replied, unable to adequately express what that simple approval meant to him. "The reason for this conversation is something else," Cecilia continued, her face returning to a serious expression. "It's about Maya's mother, Miss Louisa." Ethan's heart tightened. "What happened? Did she get worse?" "Actually, her situation is stable given the severity. But I received the documents from your legal team about the fund for her treatment." Cecilia paused. "Ethan, it's an extraordinary amount. Over $2 million. It's what's necessary to ensure the best possible treatment," he replied firmly, "for including the possibility of experimental treatments abroad if necessary. I understand and I deeply appreciate your generosity. But I have to ask, does Maya know about this? Ethan shook his head. I thought it was best not to mention it yet. I don't want to create expectations before everything is organized. Cecilia sighed. That's exactly what we need to talk about. Maya visits her mother at the hospital once a week, as you know. Ms. Louisa herself asked to be honest with her daughter about her condition. Maya knows the situation is serious, although she maintains an unshakable hope. And what exactly is the prognosis? Ethan asked, preparing for the worst. The doctors give her between 6 months and a year, Cecilia replied softly. With conventional treatment, maybe more with experimental treatments. But there are no guarantees. What I mean, Ethan, is that we need to be careful not to create false hope. Even with all the resources in the world, some problems don't have a guaranteed solution. Ethan felt as if he had been punched in the gut. In his world, money had always been the universal solution. It opened doors, created opportunities, solved problems. The idea that there were situations where even millions couldn't guarantee the desired outcome was uncomfortably new to him. I understand, he said finally, but I still want to try everything possible. And when she gets better, I want to help re-establish her and Maya's life. An apartment, a job at my company, whatever is necessary. Cecilia smiled sadly. Your intention is noble, Ethan. I just ask you to be realistic for Maya's sake. This girl has already faced many losses. The last thing she needs now are promises that can't be kept. Cecilia's words echoed in Ethan's mind for the rest of the day. As he interacted with Maya, helping her prepare a presentation on the environment for school, playing chess and losing honestly, as the girl was surprisingly good, he wondered how someone with so many reasons to be sad could radiate so much joy. Next Sunday is the day to visit your mom at the hospital, right? He asked casually, as Maya contemplated her next move on the board. Yes, she replied, strategically moving a knight. I'm making a special card for her. Sunday is her birthday. I'd like to go with you if you don't mind. Maya looked up from the board, surprised. You want to meet my mom? Of course, if you think she wouldn't mind a visit from a stranger. Maya smiled. You're not a stranger, Ethan. You're my friend. My mom will be happy to meet you. I talk about you a lot to her. You do? Ethan asked, genuinely curious. Of course. I tell her about the garden, about the math lessons you helped me with, about how funny you are trying to play soccer with the kids. Ethan laughed, remembering his clumsy attempts to join the impromptu games in the courtyard. And what else do you tell her? Maya became serious for a moment. I tell her that you're different from the other rich adults who sometimes show up here. They take pictures, give gifts, but they never come back. You came back, and you keep coming back. The simplicity and depth of that observation left Ethan speechless. He had come back, yes, and something inside him knew he would keep coming back for the rest of his life. On Sunday, Ethan showed up early at the institute, bringing a simple but elegant bouquet of flowers for Ms. Louisa. He had considered something more elaborate, but remembered Maya's lesson about unnecessary ostentation. Simple but meaningful. Maya was waiting for him anxiously, wearing her best outfit, a blue skirt and a white blouse carefully ironed. In her hands, a handmade card decorated with colorful drawings and small dried flowers from the garden, carefully glued on. Are you nervous? She asked, noticing Ethan's tension as they got into the car that would take them to the hospital. A little, he admitted. I want to make a good impression. Just be yourself, Maya advised with the wisdom of an elder. My mom can tell when people are fake. Just like me. At the hospital, a large but visibly under-resourced public building, Ethan felt a tightness in his chest. So many people in the same condition as Ms. Louisa didn't have the means to seek better treatments. It was another reality he had never directly confronted, always protected by the shield of his money and privilege. The oncology ward was particularly desolate, despite the staff's evident efforts to make it more welcoming. Children's drawings, many of them made by Maya, as she proudly explained, decorated the walls. Smiling nurses greeted the girl by name, clearly accustomed to her weekly visits. Maya, it's so good to see you, a middle-aged nurse smiled. Your mother is waiting. And who is this handsome young man with you today? This is my friend Ethan, Maya introduced him seriously. He visits me at the institute almost every day. He helps with the garden and with my lessons. A pleasure to meet you, Ethan said, extending his hand. Maya speaks very highly of the staff here. She's our favorite patient, the nurse confided. She always brings joy when she visits, not just to her mother, but to all the patients. As they entered the shared room where Ms. Louisa was, Ethan immediately recognized Maya's mother, even though he had never seen a clear picture of her. The same expressive eyes, the same gentle smile, despite the pale face and the body visibly weakened by the disease. "Mom," Maya exclaimed, running to hug her mother carefully. "Happy birthday! I brought a special friend today." Louisa smiled at her daughter with evident love, before turning her gaze to Ethan. There was curiosity in her eyes, but also a protective caution. "So you're the famous Ethan," she said, her voice soft but surprisingly firm. "Maya talks about you on every visit." "It's a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Louisa," Ethan replied, approaching and offering the flowers. "And happy birthday." "They're beautiful, thank you," she said, accepting the bouquet. "Please sit down. And just call me Louisa." While Maya excitedly showed her mother the card she had made, detailing each dried flower and drawing, Ethan watched the interaction between mother and daughter. The deep love they shared was evident, a connection that transcended the difficult situation. Louisa, despite her illness, maintained a dignity and an inner strength that Ethan immediately recognized as the source of those same qualities in Maya. After a few minutes, Louisa suggested that Maya go to the nurse's station to get water for the flowers. When the girl left, her expression changed to something more serious. "So you're the man who gave my daughter your credit card," she said directly, without accusation, but with an intensity that took Ethan by surprise. "Maya told you?" "My daughter tells me everything," Louisa replied. It was an unusual gesture. It was irresponsible, Ethan admitted, but I never imagined what she would do with it. "And what did you expect a 10-year-old child to do with a limitless credit card?" The question was direct, and Ethan decided to answer with equal honesty. "Honestly? I expected her to buy toys, candy, expensive clothes. What anyone would do, suddenly having unlimited resources." "Anyone like you, perhaps," Louisa observed, not unkindly, but with precision. "Maya was never like that. Even before I got sick, she always cared more about others than herself." Ethan nodded, acknowledging the truth in those words. "She's extraordinary. She changed the way I see the world in just a few days." Louisa studied him for a moment, as if assessing his sincerity. "Cecilia told me about your offer for my treatment," she said finally. "It's an immense generosity." "It's the least I can do," Ethan replied. "Maya deserves to have her mother back." A shadow crossed Louisa's face. "Ethan, I need to be clear. The doctors aren't optimistic about my chances. The treatment might give me more time, but—" "There are new experimental treatments," Ethan interrupted, feeling an urgency that surprised him. "Abroad, I can arrange everything." Louisa smiled sadly. "You really care about my daughter, don't you? More than I ever thought possible to care about someone in such a short time," Ethan admitted. "Then I'm going to ask you for something very important." Louisa held Ethan's hand with surprising strength. "If I can't be there for Maya, promise me you'll take care of her. Not just with money or opportunities, but by being present. She'll need someone who sees her for who she really is." The intensity of the request hit Ethan like a wave. It was an enormous responsibility, a lifelong commitment. And yet in his heart, he already knew he would do anything for Maya. "I promise," he replied, his voice choked with emotion. "I will do everything in my power to see her happy and reach her full potential." Louisa nodded, seeming momentarily relieved. "Thank you. Now, another thing I need you to understand. I don't want Maya to live with false hope. I've been talking to her about the possibility that I might not recover. It's difficult but necessary." "How does she handle it?" Ethan asked, admiring the woman's courage. "The way Maya handles everything, with a strength that surprises me every day. She cries, yes. She's afraid. But she also finds ways to turn that pain into something positive. That's why she's so dedicated to helping others. It's her way of maintaining control in a world that has taken so much from her." Maya returned at that moment, carrying a small vase with water. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, stories from the institute, Maya's grades, the garden vegetables. Ethan watched mother and daughter interact, feeling both joy at the beauty of their bond and a deep sadness at the imminent possibility of its rupture. Before they left, Louisa asked for a moment alone with Ethan again. Maya went to take some of the flowers to cheer up the other patients on the ward. "There's something else I need to tell you," Louisa said, her voice now lower and more urgent. "About Maya's father." Ethan moved closer, intrigued. "What about him?" "He didn't abandon the family as everyone thinks. That was the story we told to protect Maya." "I don't understand," Louisa sighed. "Paul was a good man, a dedicated husband. He was an engineer, worked on infrastructure projects. 5 years ago, he discovered irregularities in a major construction project. Diversion of materials, negligence in safety measures. He decided to report it." Ethan felt a chill down his spine, sensing where the story was going. "He presented evidence against powerful people," Louisa continued. "Politicians, businessmen. A week later, he had a car accident. The police said it was a fatal accident, but I always knew." Her voice broke. "My God," Ethan murmured. "To protect Maya, I made up the story that he abandoned us. I thought it would be less traumatic than the truth. And safer, if the people who did that knew we suspected." Louisa shuddered. "Why are you telling me this now?" Ethan asked, processing the revelation. "Because you have resources and influence, and because I trust you'll use them to protect Maya, not for revenge. Paul wouldn't have wanted that. He wanted justice, not revenge. What exactly do you expect me to do? When the time is right, tell Maya the truth, and help her understand that her father was a man of principle who sacrificed himself for what he believed was right. She deserves to know when she is old enough to bear that knowledge." Ethan nodded solemnly. "Do you have any proof?" "Documents. Paul saved everything. It's in a bank safe deposit box in my name. The key and access documents are with my sister in Chicago. She knows that one day someone would come asking." The conversation was interrupted by Maya's return, radiant from having distributed flowers and smiles in the neighboring rooms. The goodbye was emotional, with promises of returning next Sunday. On the way back, Maya was unusually quiet, looking out the car window with a pensive expression. "Is everything okay?" Ethan asked. "My mom is thinner," Maya replied, with an objectivity that broke Ethan's heart. "And the medicine is making her more tired. Treatments are sometimes difficult," Ethan said carefully, "but they're necessary for her to get better." Maya nodded. "I know. My mom is going to get better," she affirmed with an almost fierce determination. After a pause, she added, "But if she doesn't, I'll be okay. She taught me to be strong." Ethan felt a lump in his throat. The maturity with which this child faced a prospect that would make many adults crumble was both admirable and profoundly unfair. A 10-year-old shouldn't have to be this strong. "You know what my mom always says?" Maya continued. "That life is like our garden. Sometimes a plant dies and that's sad, but we take its seeds and plant them again. And so life goes on always." Ethan couldn't answer. He just reached out and held Maya's small hand, silently conveying what words could not express. In the days that followed, Ethan intensified his efforts to help with Louisa's treatment. He consulted international specialists, investigated experimental treatments, and used his entire network of contacts and influence to ensure that all possibilities were explored. At the same time, he became an even more constant presence in Maya's life, accompanying her not only on hospital visits, but in every aspect of her daily life. His transformation did not go unnoticed by those who knew him. Rebecca, his assistant of over a decade, commented during a rare appearance by Ethan at the office, "I've never seen you like this. It's like you're a different person." "Not a different person," Ethan corrected, reflecting on the observation. "Maybe just the person I was supposed to be all along." His routine now included morning meetings, where he delegated more and more responsibilities to his directors, and afternoons at the institute or the hospital. Horizon Tech continued to thrive, perhaps even better under the new shared leadership that Ethan was gradually implementing. In parallel, he worked on creating the New Horizons Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to supporting shelters, public hospitals, and educational programs for vulnerable children. Maya, unknowingly, was the inspiration behind every detail of the project. On one particularly significant afternoon, after helping Maya with a difficult science project about the solar system, Ethan surprised her with some news. "Maya, remember you mentioned you'd like to visit a planetarium?" "Yes, we're going next week with the money from the garden. Well, I arranged something special." Tomorrow we're going to visit the Hayden Planetarium. A friend of mine is an astronomer there, and he's going to show us everything, including the big telescope that's not normally open to the public. Maya's eyes widened with excitement. Really? Are we going to see real planets? If the weather is good, yes. We might see Jupiter, Saturn, maybe even some distant galaxies. Maya literally jumped for joy. Can I bring Lucas and Bea? They love astronomy too. Of course, Ethan replied, smiling at the girl's instinctive generosity. Actually, I spoke with Miss Cecilia, and we can take 10 children. You all can choose who gets to go. What followed was a scene Ethan would forever cherish in his memory. Maya, with all the seriousness of a little executive, gathering the other children to democratically decide who would go on the special visit. Instead of simply choosing her closest friends, she suggested a system where they would prioritize those who had never been on a special outing before, and those who had the best grades in science. That's fairer, she explained. Those who work hard deserve a reward, right? Ethan watched it all with a mixture of admiration and reflection. How many board meetings had he witnessed where decisions were made based on favoritism, internal politics, and personal interests? And here was a 10-year-old girl, instinctively implementing a genuine meritocratic system that, at the same time, left no one behind. That night, as he drove back to his apartment, Ethan reflected on how his life had changed in recent weeks. His values, his priorities, his very identity, everything was being rebuilt brick by brick through the daily lessons he learned from Maya. And yet, there was a persistent shadow on his newfound happiness, the revelation about Maya's father and Luisa's deteriorating condition. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Cecilia calling at an unusual hour. "Ethan," she said, her voice tense, "you need to come to the hospital now." "It's Luisa." Ethan's heart raced. "What happened?" "Irritante. She had a complication. She's in the ICU and she's asking for you." "Does Maya know?" "Not yet. We thought it best to talk to you first." "I'm on my way," Ethan replied, making a quick illegal U-turn to change direction, ignoring the indignant horns of other drivers. At the hospital, the scene was tense. Doctors and nurses rushed in and out of the ICU. Cecilia was waiting in the hallway, her grave expression confirming Ethan's worst fears. "How is she?" "Not good," Cecilia answered frankly. "The doctors are trying to stabilize her, but..." She didn't complete the sentence. "Can I see her?" "Just for just a few minutes," she insisted. In the ICU, Luisa looked even more fragile than on his last visit. Tubes and monitors surrounded her, creating a clinical scene that cruelly contrasted with the vitality that was still in her eyes. "Ethan," she whispered as he approached. "Thank you for coming." "Whenever you need me," he replied, carefully holding her hand. "We don't have much time," Luisa said, her voice barely audible. "Remember our conversation about Maya?" "I remember every word." "The time has come sooner than we expected." A tear ran down Luisa's pale face. "My sister Eliza, call her. The safe deposit box." "The documents, don't worry about that now," Ethan tried to reassure her. "Let's focus on your recovery." Luisa gave a small, sad smile. "Always practical. I like that about you." She squeezed his hand with surprising strength. "Maya adores you, you know. She says you're like the father she doesn't remember having." Ethan felt tears burn his eyes. "I adore her too. She changed my life." "Promise you'll take care of her," Luisa insisted. "Not just as a mentor or benefactor. She needs family, Ethan. Unconditional love." "I promise," he replied, feeling the weight of those words. "I will love her and protect her as if she were my own daughter." The heart monitor beside them began to beep faster. A nurse hurried in, indicating that their time was up. "Bring Maya tomorrow morning," Luisa requested, her voice now a whisper. "I need to see her. One last time." Ethan nodded, unable to speak, as he was gently led out of the ICU. In the hallway, he found Cecilia talking to a doctor. Their grave expressions confirmed what he already knew in his heart. "How long?" he asked the doctor directly. "Days, perhaps. Hours, possibly," the professional replied with professional compassion. "We're doing everything we can, but her body isn't responding to the treatments." Ethan nodded mechanically, trying to process the information. "She asked me to bring Maya tomorrow morning." "I think that would be appropriate," the doctor agreed. "I'll arrange for you to have privacy." Leaving the hospital into the cold New York night, Ethan felt as if he were carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. How could he tell Maya that her mother was leaving? How could he help her process this loss? And how could he honor the promise he had made to Louisa, not just to take care of Maya, but to be family to her? The questions swirled in his mind as he drove slowly back home. The night sky, the same one that would show Maya the stars through a powerful telescope tomorrow, seemed simultaneously vast and suffocating. Somewhere beyond those stars, Ethan thought, there might be answers to the mysteries of life and death, of suffering and redemption. Or perhaps the answers were much closer, in the smile of a child who, facing the worst of losses, still found the strength to light up the lives of others. The morning broke grey over New York, as if the city itself shared the weight of that day. Ethan hadn't slept. He had spent the entire night trying to find words that simply didn't exist. How to explain to a child that her mother was in the final moments of her journey? He arrived at the Hope Institute at 6 in the morning. Cecilia was already waiting for him, her eyes revealing a similarly sleepless night. "How are we going to tell her?" Ethan asked without preamble. "With honesty and love," Cecilia replied. "It's what Louisa always wanted." Maya, as always, surprised them with her perception. When Cecilia woke her earlier than usual and said that Ethan was waiting to take her to the hospital, the girl looked at the two adults and understood immediately. "My mum is leaving, isn't she?" she asked directly, her voice small but firm. Ethan knelt to be at her level, holding her small hands in his. "She's very sick, Maya. The doctors are doing everything they can, but—" "I understand," Maya interrupted with a maturity that broke Ethan's heart. "She told me this might happen." "Your mother asked to see you," Cecilia continued softly. "She's waiting for you." Maya nodded, her eyes welling up but not shedding a single tear. "Can I bring my new drawing for her?" "Of course," Ethan replied, admiring the strength of that little soul. On the way to the hospital, Maya remained silent, carefully holding a folder with her most recent drawings. Ethan respected her space, just keeping a gentle hand on her shoulder, a silent reminder that she was not alone. At the hospital, they were greeted by the same doctor from the previous night, who led them to the ICU with a grave expression. "She had a difficult night," he explained in a low voice to Ethan, as Maya walked a little ahead. "But she's lucid and waiting for her daughter." Before entering the room, Maya stopped and looked at Ethan. "Are you coming in with me?" "It's only if you want me to," he replied, understanding the sacred moment that was about to happen between mother and daughter. "I want you to," Maya said, taking his hand. "My mom likes you." "And so do I." The simplicity of that declaration hit Ethan like a wave of warmth in the midst of that cold morning. Together, they entered the ICU room. Louisa looked even more fragile than the night before, but her eyes lit up when she saw her daughter. With visible effort, she raised her hand in a silent invitation. Maya ran to hug her mother carefully, avoiding the tubes and machines. "I brought my new drawings for you to see," she said, showing the folder. "How wonderful, my love," Louisa whispered, her voice barely audible. "Show me." With the sweet innocence of childhood mixed with the precocious wisdom life had imposed on her, Maya began to show her drawings one by one. Colorful landscapes, portraits of friends from the Institute, imaginary scenes of distant places she dreamed of visiting one day. For each one, she explained the details with excitement, as if it were just another normal day, as if they were sitting in their living room instead of a hospital room. Ethan watched the scene from a respectful distance, feeling the tears silently stream down his face. The courage of both, mother and daughter in the face of the inevitable, was a lesson in love he would never forget. After seeing all the drawings, Louisa made an effort to speak more clearly. "Maya, my love, remember what we talked about the stars?" Maya nodded seriously. "That even when we can't see them, they're still there." "Exactly. And do you remember what else I said?" "That people are like stars. Sometimes they go far away where we can't see them, but they keep shining and watching over us." "That's right, my love." Louisa took a deep breath, gathering her strength. "Mommy is going to have to become a star soon, you understand? My body is very tired." Maya nodded again, a tear finally escaping her eye. "I know, Mommy, we talked about this. I want you to know that wherever I am, I'll be watching over you, and I want you to continue being the amazing girl you are, kind, generous, brave." Louisa caressed her daughter's face with trembling hands. "You have such a big heart, my Maya. The world needs hearts like yours." I'm going to miss you, Mommy, Maya said, her voice finally breaking. Me too, my love. But I won't really be far away. I'll be in your drawings, in the garden flowers, in the stars in the sky. And here. Louisa placed her hand on her daughter's chest. Always here. Louisa then looked at Ethan, who approached at her silent call. Ethan will take care of you now, she said to Maya. He promised. And I know he will keep that promise. Maya looked at Ethan, her eyes full of tears and questions. I will take care of you, Maya, Ethan confirmed, kneeling to be at her level. Whenever you need me, I'll be there. I promise. Louisa smiled, a faint but peaceful smile. Now, my little star, how about you show me that last special drawing you made? Maya took a different drawing from the folder. It was a portrait of her mother, but not as she was now, frail and sick, but as she was before, radiant and full of life. In the drawing, Louisa was in a garden surrounded by colorful flowers with the sun shining above. It's beautiful, my love, Louisa whispered, tears running down her pale face. Perfect. It's for you to take, Maya explained, to the place with the stars. It was too much for Ethan, who had to turn away to hide his sobs. When he managed to compose himself and looked back, he saw Louisa whispering something in Maya's ear. The girl nodded seriously before giving her mother one last long hug. The heart monitor began to show signs of instability. The doctor, who had been watching discreetly from the door, made a gesture indicating they needed to end the visit. I love you to infinity and beyond. My star, Louisa said, clearly using her last strength. I love you more. Mommy? Maya replied, carefully placing her drawing in her mother's hands. Until tomorrow and always. As they left the room, Maya looked at Ethan with a wisdom beyond her years. She's becoming a star now, isn't she? Ethan, unable to speak, just nodded, hugging her close. It's okay, Maya said surprisingly. She's not in pain now, and she'll be able to see all the stars up close. In the hours that followed, they remained at the hospital, Ethan, Maya, and Cecilia, who had arrived shortly after. They sat in a small waiting room, mostly in silence, except when Maya occasionally asked a question or shared a memory about her mother. Did you know my mom used to sing to me every night? Maya said, even when she was really tired from work. She said songs are hugs that stay in the air. That's a beautiful thought, Ethan replied, marveling at the poetry of the image. What was your favorite song? Over the Rainbow, Maya answered. From The Wizard of Oz. Mommy said that one day I would find the place where dreams come true. It was in the middle of this conversation that the doctor entered the room, his expression revealing what words didn't need to say. Maya, again demonstrating her extraordinary perception, understood even before the doctor spoke. My mum became a star now, didn't she? The doctor, visibly moved, just nodded, kneeling to speak directly to her. Yes, Maya, your mother is at peace now. She was very brave until the end. I know, Maya replied. She taught me to be brave too. The days that followed were a blur of arrangements, paperwork, and decisions. Ethan took on all the practical responsibilities, ensuring that Louisa had a dignified and beautiful farewell ceremony. Maya participated in every decision, choosing flowers, songs, even the dress her mother would wear on her final journey. It has to be the blue one, she said with conviction. It's the color of the sky. Now she's part of the sky. The ceremony was simple but deeply moving. Besides the children and staff from the Hope Institute, former co-workers of Louisa, old neighbors, and even some patients and nurses from the hospital attended, all touched by the story of that extraordinary woman and her equally special daughter. Maya, dressed in a simple white dress, stood firm throughout the ceremony. When it was time for eulogies, she surprised everyone by asking to speak. She climbed onto the small podium and in a clear voice said, My mom taught me that we never really lose the ones we love. People become stars, flowers, songs, and memories. They stay in our hearts forever. My mom was the kindest person in the world, and she asked me to keep being kind even when it's hard. I promised her, and now I promise all of you too. There wasn't a dry eye in the place. Ethan, sitting in the front row, felt transformed by those simple but profound words. The wisdom of that child, forged in the deepest pain, was a light that illuminated the world's shadows. In the following weeks, Ethan accelerated the legal process to officially become Maya's guardian. With Cecilia's help and the unanimous support of the Hope Institute's board, the transition was surprisingly smooth from a bureaucratic standpoint. The bigger challenge would be emotional, helping Maya process her grief while they built a new family together. Ethan chose not to move Maya into his penthouse immediately. Instead, he began to divide his time between the apartment and the institute, so the girl could maintain her routine and connections with the friends who were like siblings to her. "When you feel ready, we can think about you coming to live with me," he told Maya about a month after the funeral. "But there's no rush, and you can always visit your friends here. In fact, they can visit us too." "Can I have a room with a window to the sky?" Maya asked. "To see the stars at night?" "Of course," Ethan replied, already mentally redesigning his apartment to accommodate the request. "We can even install a small telescope." It was during this transition period that Ethan finally contacted Eliza, Louisa's sister who lived in Chicago. The woman, who looked strikingly like Louisa, confirmed everything that had been said about Maya's father. "Paul was a man of integrity," she said, handing Ethan an envelope with the documents from the safe deposit box. "When he discovered the irregularities in that construction project, he didn't think twice about reporting it, even knowing the risks. He said he couldn't live with himself, knowing that people could get hurt or worse due to greed-driven negligence." "Does Maya know anything about this?" Ethan asked. "No, Louisa thought it was best to spare her." "Such a little child. How do you explain that there are people capable of hurting someone for money?" Ethan nodded, understanding the decision. "When she's older, I'll tell her the truth. She deserves to know what kind of man her father was." "Thank you for taking care of her," Eliza said with tears in her eyes. "I would have taken responsibility, but my situation, 3 young children, a sick husband, I couldn't give her the attention she deserves." "I understand completely," Ethan reassured her, "but I hope you'll be part of her life. Maya needs family, connections to her past." "Of course I will," Eliza guaranteed, "and I'm glad she found you." Louisa spoke very highly of the man who was being transformed by her daughter. Those words stayed with Ethan for days. Indeed, he had been transformed. The cold, calculating man who measured value only in figures had been completely reshaped by the generous heart of a child. 3 months after the funeral, Maya finally felt ready to move. Ethan had transformed one of the rooms in his penthouse into a perfect space for her, with a comfortable bed, bookshelves, a desk for studying, and, as promised, a large window with a view of the sky, complete with a small but powerful telescope. "It's perfect," Maya said upon seeing the room for the first time, her eyes shining with a joy that had been absent for weeks. "Can I paint stars on the ceiling?" "Of course you can," Ethan replied, happy to see that spark return to her eyes. "In fact, I bought special glow-in-the-dark paints. We can paint an entire galaxy if you want." The move was gradual, with Maya initially spending only a few days a week at the apartment, returning to the institute on the other days. Ethan respected her pace, understanding the importance of maintaining the connection with the place that had been her home for so long. Meanwhile, he continued his efforts to formalize the New Horizons Foundation. The project had grown in ambition and scope. It would not just be a source of funds for institutions like the Hope Institute, but a center for social innovation, developing educational, cultural, and health programs for vulnerable children. "I want you to help me with the foundation," Ethan said to Maya during dinner, about 6 months after Louisa's passing. "You have ideas that would never occur to me." "Me? But I'm just a kid," Maya replied, genuinely surprised. "A kid with an extraordinary understanding of what really matters," Ethan affirmed. "Besides, the foundation is for children like you. Who better to say what they really need?" The idea of being able to help other children gave Maya a new purpose. In the following months, she became an active participant in the Foundation's planning meetings, frequently surprising the adults with her simple yet profoundly insightful perspectives. "There's no point in giving computers to a school if the teachers don't know how to use them," she observed during a discussion about equipment donations. "We need to teach the teachers first. Or the kids need time to play, not just to study. Playing teaches important things too." Each of Maya's interventions was met with a mix of surprise and respect from the executives and specialists hired by Ethan. The 10-year-old girl often saw past the adult complexities, getting straight to the heart of the matter. The relationship between Ethan and Maya deepened every day. It wasn't a replacement for what she had lost. No one could replace Louisa, but a new connection, unique and special in its own way. Ethan learned to be a father, a role he had never imagined for himself, while Maya showed him, with infinite patience, how to open his heart to unconditional love. Together they established new traditions. Sundays, at the farmer's market helping at the Institute's stand. Friday nights stargazing with the telescope. Saturday mornings making breakfast together. Maya had insisted they no longer needed Mrs. Zoe for everything. Some things we need to do with our own hands to make them taste better, she explained, in another of her wisdom lessons. A year after Louisa's passing, Ethan finally made the decision to open the safe deposit box left by Paul, Maya's father. The contents were more extensive than he had imagined. Detailed documents, construction plans with annotations, copies of emails, audio recordings, and even a sealed flash drive with a handwritten note. Open only if something happens to me. With the discreet help of a former colleague who now worked at the district attorney's office, Ethan began to examine the material. The truth was even darker than Louisa had suggested. Paul had discovered not just material diversion and safety negligence, but a complex scheme involving high-ranking politicians, powerful businessmen, and even elements of organized crime. The evidence was damning and pointed to a specific group of people, some of whom Ethan knew personally from his business circles. The discovery placed Ethan before a moral dilemma. Exposing these people would mean justice for Paul, but it could also put Maya at risk. Moreover, many of those involved were powerful figures, capable of protecting themselves through their influence and connections. After weeks of reflection and confidential consultations with legal and security experts, Ethan made a decision. He would not seek revenge but justice, not just for Paul, but for all the potential victims of similar schemes that were still happening. Using his resources and influence, he organized a complete and irrefutable dossier, which was delivered simultaneously to 3 entities: the DA's office, an international transparency organization, and a select group of trusted investigative journalists. The multi-pronged approach would ensure that even if one front was blocked by influence or corruption, the others would continue. The case exploded in the media a few weeks later, causing a political and business earthquake. Powerful names were exposed, decades-old schemes came to light, and formal investigations were launched. Ethan kept his name completely out of the process, working behind the scenes to ensure that justice ran its course without compromising Maya's safety. The girl, now 11, still did not know the whole truth about her father. Ethan planned to tell her when she was older, when she could fully comprehend the meaning of the courage and integrity Paul had shown. Meanwhile, life continued on its new course. The New Horizons Foundation had been officially inaugurated with a simple but moving ceremony at the Hope Institute, the first of many projects supported by the initiative. Maya, dressed in a formal children's suit she had chosen herself, cut the inaugural ribbon alongside Ethan, to emotional applause. "This foundation is born from a story of transformation," Ethan said in his speech. "My transformation through the extraordinary heart of a child who taught me the true meaning of generosity and humanity. Our goal is simple: to create opportunities for every child to reach their full potential, regardless of their circumstances. Because as I learned from my daughter Maya, a person's true value is not in what they possess, but in what they are able to give." The word daughter did not go unnoticed. It was the first time Ethan had used it publicly, although it had been part of their private conversations for months. Maya, upon hearing it, smiled with tears in her eyes, squeezing Ethan's hand tightly. After the ceremony, as they mingled with the guests, an elderly woman shyly approached Maya. "You may not remember me," she said, "but you helped me one day over a year ago. I was in the square, cold. You brought me socks and a blanket." Maya looked at the woman, trying to remember. She had helped so many people that day with Ethan's card. "Mrs. Helen?" she ventured, finally recognizing her. "Yes, dear." The woman smiled, moved to be remembered. "I wanted you to know that that day changed my life. Not just for the material comfort, but because you treated me like a person, not a problem. It was the push I needed to seek help. Today I have a small job and a place to live." Maya hugged the woman, genuinely happy at the news. Ethan, watching the scene, felt his chest flood with pride and love. That child continued to create waves of transformation, far beyond what he could have imagined. That night, After the day's excitement, Ethan found Maya in her room, looking at the sky through her telescope. "Find anything interesting?" he asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I'm looking for the brightest star," she replied, still looking through the lens. "I think it might be my mom." Ethan smiled, moved. "I'm sure it is. She was always a powerful light." Maya moved away from the telescope and looked at Ethan with a serious expression. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, anything. Do you think she would be proud of me? Of what we're doing with the foundation?" Ethan felt a lump in his throat. "Maya, I have absolutely no doubt that your mother is extremely proud of you. And not just for the work at the foundation, but for who you are, brave, kind, generous, wise beyond your years. You are any parent's dream." Maya smiled, her eyes shining in the lamplight. "And my dad? Do you think he would be proud too?" The question caught Ethan off guard. Maya rarely spoke of the father she believed had abandoned the family. "Your father," he began hesitantly. "There's something I need to tell you about him, Maya. Not now, but soon, when you're a little older. But I can guarantee one thing. He would be the proudest father in the world. You promise you'll tell me everything?" She insisted, with that sharp perception that always surprised him. "I promise. And you know I always keep my promises." Maya seemed satisfied with the answer. She turned back to the telescope, carefully adjusting the focus. "Look!" she exclaimed suddenly. "I found Jupiter. Can you see the moons?" Ethan moved closer, looking through the lens. The giant planet was there, with its colorful bands and small points of light around it, the Galilean moons. "It's beautiful," he commented, genuinely impressed. "Did you know that humans are made of the same stuff as stars?" Maya asked, with that unique mix of childish innocence and ancient wisdom. "My science teacher said that all the elements in our bodies were created in stars that exploded billions of years ago." "That's true," Ethan confirmed, smiling at the observation. "So in a way, my mom just went back home," Maya concluded. "And one day we'll all go back to the stars too." Ethan felt tears burn his eyes. "That's a beautiful thought, Maya." "I'm not sad," she assured him, sensing his emotion. "Not anymore. Mommy taught me that sadness is like rain. It needs to fall so new things can grow. And look how many good things have grown since then. The foundation, our new home, you and me as a family. You're extraordinary, you know that?" Ethan said, marveling at the resilience and wisdom of this child. Maya smiled, that smile that had changed his life forever. "No, I'm not. I just learned to see what really matters." That night, while Maya slept, Ethan stood on his balcony contemplating the illuminated city. His life had changed completely in just 1 year. The man who measured value in money and power now understood that true wealth lay in human connections, in shared love, in the ability to make a difference in the lives of others. Thanks to Maya, a child who, having so little, had given him the greatest gift of all, the rediscovery of his own humanity. A week later, Ethan received an unexpected phone call. It was his contact at the DA's office. "Ethan, we have significant progress in the case. They're starting to fall like dominoes. 2 of those involved have already accepted plea deals. They're ready to tell everything." "And what about Paul's accident?" Ethan asked, choosing his words carefully. "It's part of the investigation. One of the informants explicitly mentioned it was no accident. We will have justice, Ethan." Hanging up, Ethan felt a mix of relief and apprehension. Justice would be served for Paul, but that meant the time to tell Maya the whole truth would soon arrive. Her father hadn't abandoned the family. He had been a silent hero, a man who had sacrificed everything for his principles. How would she receive this truth? Would it be too heavy a burden for her young shoulders? Or would it be a confirmation of what in her heart she might have already suspected? These questions were still swirling in his mind when he heard Maya's voice calling him from the kitchen. "Ethan, come see the cake I made." Smiling, he put his worries aside for another moment. He had learned that the present, every shared moment, every small joy, was the true treasure of life. The future would bring its challenges, but they would face them together as a family. In the kitchen, he found Maya standing proudly next to a lopsided cake, but one that was lavishly covered in chocolate frosting and small, colorful sugar stars. "It's to celebrate the Foundation's anniversary," she explained excitedly. "It's been a week since we opened." "It's perfect," Ethan said, genuinely impressed with the effort. "Did Mrs. Zoe help you?" "Just a little bit," Maya admitted with a mischievous smile. "But the decoration was all my idea. Look, I put stars of all colors." "I see that," Ethan smiled, noting the meaning behind the decoration. "Stars to light up new paths." "Exactly," Maya clapped, delighted that he had understood. "Because that's what the foundation is going to do, light up paths for kids like me." Ethan hugged Maya, feeling once again amazed by the depth of that little soul. "You know what else I'm thinking?" she continued as she cut a generous slice of cake. "We could create a special project within the foundation for kids who have lost their parents like me. A place where they can talk about their feelings, make art, plant things." "That's a wonderful idea, Maya," Ethan replied, already visualizing how to implement the suggestion. "We can start planning it tomorrow. And we can call it the Star Project," she suggested, her eyes shining. "Because these kids need to know that even when the person we love goes away, their light continues to guide our path." In that moment, watching Maya excitedly explain her vision for the new project, Ethan had a crystal-clear certainty. This girl would change the world. Not necessarily with great inventions or revolutionary discoveries, but with something equally powerful: the ability to see kindness where others see only darkness, to plant hope where there only seems to be despair. And he, Ethan Hayes, who had once been the coldest, most calculating businessman in New York, now had a new purpose in life: to be the father who would help this bright star reach her full potential. The black card he had once offered as a cruel test had become the catalyst for his own redemption. The lesson Maya had taught him, that true wealth is not measured by digits in a bank account, but by the ability to transform lives, now guided his every decision. As they enjoyed the cake together, talking about future dreams and new projects, Ethan realized he had never felt so rich in his entire life. A few months later, the New Horizons Foundation had already expanded its operations to 3 states. The STAR project, conceived by Maya, had become its most successful program, with an innovative methodology for emotional support and development for children who had lost their parents. On a sunny Sunday morning, as they prepared breakfast together, now a weekly tradition, Ethan finally felt the time was right. "Maya," he began, pouring orange juice into 2 glasses. "Remember, I promised to tell you something important about your father when the time was right?" The girl, now almost 12, stopped mixing pancake batter and looked at him attentively. "Yes, is it time now?" Ethan nodded, motioning for them to sit at the table. Carefully and sensitively, he revealed the whole truth about Paul. Not the man who had abandoned his family, but the man of integrity who had refused to collude with corruption, even knowing the risks. He explained how her mother had protected Maya with the abandonment story, fearing the truth was too dangerous for a child. "Your father was a hero, Maya," Ethan concluded. "A man who put his principles above his own well-being. And now, finally, there is justice. The people responsible are being investigated and punished." Maya listened in silence, silent tears streaming down her face. When Ethan finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "I always felt it," she said finally, her voice small but firm. "Even when I was too little to understand, I always felt there was something wrong with the abandonment story. It didn't match the few memories I have of him." "I'm sorry you had to grow up not knowing the truth," Ethan said. "Don't be," Maya replied, surprising him. "Mom did what she thought was best to protect me. And now I know." She wiped her tears and looked directly at Ethan. "I think I got it from him, you know? This thing of wanting to help others, of doing what's right even when it's hard." "I'm sure you did," Ethan agreed, moved. "You have the best of both of them, your father's courage and your mother's generous heart." Maya smiled through her tears. "And now I have you too. Someone who teaches me about business, about how to turn ideas into action, about how to use resources to do good." "Me?" Ethan laughed softly. "I think you're the one who taught me almost everything that matters, Maya." "Then we learned together," she concluded simply, "like a real family." That day, they decided together to create another program within the foundation, the Paul Rogers Fund, dedicated to rewarding and protecting whistleblowers of corruption and irregularities in public works. It was the perfect way to honor the legacy of Maya's father, turning his personal tragedy into hope for others. As they worked on the details of the new project, Ethan reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them here. A cold businessman and a vulnerable child, united by fate on an ordinary morning on Fifth Avenue. A cruel test that had turned into a life lesson. A tragedy that, instead of hardening hearts, had opened the way for a new kind of love and purpose. And at the center of it all, a simple truth that Maya had taught him on the first day. When you help someone, you get a gift too. Inside here, in your heart. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Ethan and Maya has touched your hearts. To accompany this emotional journey of transformation and rebirth, we have prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories about the power of altruism and kindness that transforms lives. Find it by clicking on the left. If you were moved by this narrative of redemption and hope, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life and the beauty of human connections. Tell us in the comments if you have ever lived or witnessed a moment of transformation similar to Ethan's. We look forward to seeing you in the next story.